Hi guys, it is day 5 of quarantine here in France. It's actually a beautiful day outside. I don't know if that makes it better or worse, but it's kind of nice to have the sun shining in on the windows a bit. I hope that you're doing well wherever you are. If you're quarantined, I hope you're keeping your spirits up high, staying positive, finding things to do at home. And if you're not quarantined yet or anymore, I hope you're still practicing great social distancing, isolating yourself from people, and just staying the F away from everyone. So far, the coronavirus here in Europe and in France is not slowing down. So we've had 12,600, a bit more than that, but around 12,600 cases in France and 450 deaths. That was the last number that we were told, which is last night. So we'll have new numbers tonight, but nobody's predicting that this will slow down for at least another week or two. So I don't think the situation will be better tonight, but who knows? We'll see. Even though we've been in quarantine now for 5 days, and as I previously talked about some mixed, unclear messages in my last video, those have mostly been cleared up and we know what we're supposed to be doing, what we can and can't do. There's still some questions that the general French population has about the coronavirus that sometimes they don't feel like they're getting enough answers from the government. So I'm going to talk to you guys about the 5 questions that I noticed are being really asked a lot, either on the news, by the journalists, on social media, etc. So I'm going to jump into those questions right away, but don't hesitate to write in the comments any of the questions that your country's asking the government, any of the things you don't understand about coronavirus, what you think about the questions that the French are kind of wondering about, because maybe we're going to have more things in common than you actually think. There are a lot of different type of masks out there, but there's one specific mask that we've been talking about a lot in France, which they call the FFP2 mask. These masks are proven to be the most effective against the coronavirus. So it's really the masks that our medical staff needs, that our nurses need, that anyone who's really on the front line treating patients with coronavirus, they need these masks. In France in 2009, they actually had 720 million masks. That's like 11 masks per person in France. There was a lot of masks, and they actually spent 32 million euros to build this huge hangar that they could keep all of these FFP2 masks in, along with other medical supplies that we would need in France in case of a health emergency. Today in France, we're being told that while France has 150 million surgical masks, which aren't as protective as these FFP2 masks, those are more masks that you would see maybe the general population wearing when they're sick, but the government is saying that they don't have any more FFP2. They're completely out of stock of these masks. So the French population is saying like, what the frack? Where did the 720 million masks that we had in 2009 go? So the government's response to that was, after health crises that we had in 2011 and 2013, we decided that these masks would no longer be needed or need to be supplied by the government, and they should actually be supplied by employers. So then all the French journalists are like, okay, but what was our strategy if we were ever going to need FFP2 masks again, like today? And the government says, well, actually France is one of the countries that produces the most masks in the world. So we knew that we could really mobilize production, and we also knew that we could quickly mobilize production in China if needed. And then the journalists were all like, but okay, so our strategy was actually based on a country who's had parts of it in lockdown for the last 8 weeks were supposed to help us. And we've known this for months. And we haven't started upping production on these masks in our own country until how long ago? And still, where are the 720 million masks that we had in stock? What did you do with them? And so the French don't really feel like they're getting very clear answers about it, and especially because we keep hearing from healthcare professionals we don't have the supplies to be safe and to do our job and to save lives like we should. It creates a lot of tension when the population is just questioning, well, what happened to all of these masks that we had, and why wasn't the strategy already put in place? Today, the current strategy in France is not to test everybody who has the virus. The idea is that we only need to test people that are vulnerable. So if you're an elderly or if you have underlying health problems, and so this could potentially become fatal, you would be tested. And of course, anybody, no matter what your age is, that goes in and is hospitalized is then tested. And any medical workers who've been on the front line and who have been exposed to the disease will be tested if they have symptoms too. But otherwise, if you can live out the disease at home, they prefer, if you're not having respiratory problems, to stay at home, get healthy at home, and don't obviously contaminate anyone else, and you don't need to be tested. And this strategy has been widely criticized by the French, because you have countries like South Korea, for example, who chose a strategy of testing a lot. So they've tested over 220,000 people in South Korea. They were meticulous about testing every single person that showed symptoms. As soon as they had a positive test, they went and they found every person that they had been in contact with for the last 2 weeks, put them in isolation, and restarted over again. They were really all about cutting off the virus from new bodies that it could implant in. Even in Germany, for example, if you talk about a country that's a little bit closer to France, they just opened drive-through testing centers, so you can drive up and get tested, which I'm pretty surprised it wasn't the Americans who thought of that with our love for fast food drive-thrus. But it was the Germans. So they're also more in this pro-testing and let's try to test a lot of people. And so the French are just a bit critical as, why is our strategy the way that it is? Why aren't we doing it, say for example, the way that South Korea did it, because it's already been proven to work? This isn't necessarily criticism from the French about their own government strategy, as much as just questioning and wondering why there's not more of a European strategy in place. It makes me think a bit about what's going on in the US, where President Trump hasn't declared any federal measures for shelter in, for example. And so what's going on in New York can be different from Texas and could be different from Washington. Well, obviously, in Europe, the strategy to attack this virus can be different in France versus Germany and versus the UK. So for example, a couple of days ago, the UK were talking about the fact that their way of attacking the virus was something called herd immunity, which is more about getting a large part of your population, this would be like 60%, infected, so that the virus doesn't have as many hosts to jump to, and that's kind of how you help die it out. My personal view on herd immunity is that it sounds very frackin' dangerous, Boris Johnson, and I don't know if it's the best idea. Whether it's a good idea or not is another discussion, but what the French were kind of skeptical about is this is a worldwide health crisis, and we're supposed to stay really like solidaire with Europe, and why aren't we all in the same kind of strategy to try to beat this virus? To be fair, recently the UK has come back saying, listen, we're not, using the herd immunity as a strategy, we're really trying to minimize the amount of people that are being infected, just like you're doing in France and in other countries. So it's not the case as of today, but when it seemed like that was the way that the UK was moving forward, there's just a lot of questions around why would we do something different? Why wouldn't we be doing the same as the UK? Why wouldn't they be doing the same as us? And why wouldn't we have more of a European approach to doing things? I spoke about this in my last video, but last Sunday, so about almost a week now, there were regional elections that happened in France. And the Thursday before these regional elections took place was when Macron announced to the nation that daycares, schools, and universities would all be closed starting from the following Monday. And then on Saturday, it was announced that all the restaurants and bars and gatherings of more than 100 people would no longer happen as well. And so on Sunday, there should have been these votes. And Macron told the nation, I've spoken to scientists and researchers, and we've decided to keep the voting. And these regional votes will happen with higher security measures, making sure everyone stays 1 meter away from each other, and with a lot of antibacterial gel to make sure that everybody is being safe. Bring your own pens to vote, this kind of thing. So the French public was kind of like, are you serious? You just got on national news and said that this virus is so dangerous for the elderly and it can be fatal for so many of them. And then you're saying that we need to keep voting on Sunday, that these elderly people should then leave their houses to go for. And Macron said, voting is really a part of democracy and it's a big part of our country, and therefore we need to keep the votes. But then the French public were like, well, how democratic is it to tell a lot of elderly people that it's very unsafe for them to leave their homes, but then you need to leave your homes to come vote, because then what happens is most of them aren't voting, so you're excluding a portion of your population from a vote. And even though it seemed like a huge part of the general population was against these votes, they still took place. And there was actually quite a low turnout. And in France, voting takes place in 2 elections. So you vote once and then you have a second vote. And the second vote has now been pushed back into, I don't know if it was June or until a later date, and some people are even saying that first vote should be canceled. There never should have been a vote in the first place. So a lot of people are really skeptical about this. They kind of feel like President Macron wanted to hurry up and get the elections over with so that if this health crisis wasn't handled well, it wouldn't hurt his party in city elections. I obviously don't know if that's a real reason or not, but it was definitely, even coming from me who can't vote, it was definitely something that I thought was really bizarre. So I'm going to finish up with one that's kind of funny, if you can find any humor in people selfishly hoarding things during a crisis. The French, and I think the entire world, has seen the images of people in all different countries going absolutely crazy about toilet paper. Guys, this is one thing that I really don't get, so please explain to me in the comments below if you have a reasoning as to why people go nuts over toilet paper. I watched this hilarious video, I'll put it in the link below, and it was somebody who was kind of making fun of this whole phenomenon about, you know, grabbing toilet paper and physically like assaulting people to make sure you have enough toilet paper, saying like, I think there must have been a rumor going around that this virus was somehow like infecting and attacking people's buttholes, because I don't know why else people would be so crazy about toilet paper. And I was dying, because it's true that for me, I mean, it's my own personal point of view, but I'm more worried about having like pasta or things that I can eat, because in like a really rough situation, there's so many things that you can switch in for toilet paper, and if it's really that bad and you have nothing, there's always a shower that you can go to, but you can't always have something to eat. So a lot of talk about this in the media, and a lot of images being shown of people in all different countries grabbing toilet paper, and everybody kind of asking the question as to like, why are we doing this? So if you know why, don't forget to let me know. All right guys, that is a wrap for this video about coronavirus. I still haven't put out one of my regular videos. I don't know, it still feels a bit off, but maybe it'll feel different in the next coming days, so we'll see. But in any case, everybody out there, stay safe, wash your hands, see if you can help your neighbor, stay positive, try to see the good in things, and I'm sending everybody lots and lots of bisous from France.